Hey everyone, it's 10, and today I want to talk to you about the idea of God, Godhead, Source, Prima Materia, whatever it is you want to call it, just the thing that all of reality emanates from. So I grew up in a Christian household, and I grew up with a specific set of doctrines and beliefs about what God is based on the Bible, and also what his agenda was with humanity and perhaps our individual lives. I grew up being very faithful or always enmeshed in that religion, but as I started to grow older and I gained the ability to reason and question, I realized a lot of what I was taught didn't really add up. Logically, emotionally, ethically, there were a lot of holes that I found, and it led me feeling unsatisfied and disconnected from the doctrines that I was being taught. Eventually, in my adulthood, when I began to really delve into other forms of spirituality and other spiritual beliefs that exist out there, I realized how many different ways God can be interpreted and how all of it is sort of related but unique and different in their own right. And there are advantages to having these different distinctions. Over the course of my life, I went from believing into one specific God, the Christian God of Abraham through a specific name, to being agnostic and not really being sure of any God, to understanding God in a completely new light and in a different way. And some people would call this Source or the All or the Godhead, the culmination of all spirit. When I began learning about different deities that existed, I realized that the God that I served throughout my youth was more like a deity than the actual capital G God. It was a specific kind of God, if that makes sense, a specific facet of what God could be or what Source is as a whole. I realized that these different pantheons of belief are simply different ways to explain the world around us and the nature of divinity, and that the God that I was taught to believe in growing up was also just a specific expression of divinity. I think that it's up to us individually to interpret our own truths about divinity, religion, and God, but I want to share with you what I found and learned growing up from that Christian background into where I am now, being a solitary witch. The first thing to ask is, where did the gods that we knew come from? Where does this physical earth come from? And we can trace the timeline of this physical plane in terms of science to the Big Bang, the point where everything was unified and nothing was separate. And I think that the same thing was occurring spiritually, where everything was simply the one thing. There was no distinction between you and I, good or evil, or any form of duality, really. There was simply one. With the subject of gods, I kept asking, well, who created that God and who created that creator? And you'll keep going on with this chain until you get to the point where it just came from a source that was always there, has always existed, and has never changed. I do believe that this intelligence, or these collection of spirits that refer to themselves as the one thing, decided to think and to create everything that exists within our lives, that is physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Whether you believe it is one deity or one being or a collection of deities. It doesn't necessarily matter, because what we're referring to is this source, the prima materia, the first material. My understanding of God and humanity and the interplay that is between them is that humanity is a step in consciousness towards becoming the one thing or reuniting with Source. I personally believe that all human souls are connected in one way or another, and I've heard some people say and claim that we are all technically one human being, but we live all of these lives simultaneously. There was a personal point in my journey where I realized how connected we all are, but also how our differences and our different lives is what develops our soul and why we're all separated into different bodies. I do believe that God put us into particular lifetimes, specific families, specific eras, and specific circumstances to develop and enrich our soul and to test us to see how far we can be developed. I believe that each lifetime that we experience is unique in that it is supposed to develop your soul in a certain way. A part of my personal belief is that this has something to do with the zodiac wheel and how we're trying to achieve a whole soul by experiencing all of these archetypes, all of these expressions through multiple lifetimes. That is at least one part of the soul that keeps being reincarnated over and over again. But I do believe that we have an ego and a personal self that doesn't get reincarnated for a reason. I think that the personal self, the ego, the me that isn't attached to the higher self or the super soul, I believe that we can affect how that part of the soul plays on the different realms beyond just our mundane life. I know that some people can become ascended masters. I know that through fame or infamy, people become stars, and that is their legacy. I know that sometimes the stories about individuals evolve to the point where they become gods. All of this is potential because we have an ego and we also have free will. We can choose to see how we develop ourselves and our souls through this lifetime, and I believe that that's why God put us here. We do have different checkpoints in our lives that we have to reach, different trials that we have to overcome, different karma that we have to settle and resolve. But it is really that, all of it, that develops our soul. There was also a part in my own personal awakening where I realized how much everything was just an illusion. Or, as I figured out, it's more like a projection. If you've ever seen The Matrix and that point in the movie where Neo realizes that there's a code behind everything, I kind of had that moment, and I realized how coded everything is and how much we have the potential to influence the code, but it is up to us to figure out how we interface with it, how we interact with God and divinity, and change the world, our mutual world, into what we desire it to be. That's everything that I wanted to talk to you about today, and if you enjoyed this, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. I would appreciate it. And until next time, I hope you take care. Bye.